right, so good sleep is really, really important for the same reasons as stress. So stress and sleep kind of go like this, and they spin with each other. Okay? If you have one, you can't have the other, and if you don't have the other, you can't have the, you know, like that kind of thing. So they perpetuate each other. Okay? The next one, fermented and traditionally prepared foods held a strong place in culture and diet. How many of you guys eat fermented foods? Yeah. I know you do. You've started, Dave, yeah? Yeah, and Linda has started too. Is this your third round too? Oh, I didn't even point that out. Linda's a three-timer too. Come so far. Right, so fermented foods, that gut flora that we were talking about, that's fed through fermented foods. So fermenting of foods creates good bacteria. It's a way of preserving the food. They didn't have refrigerators, so they had to. That's actually how beer started. Isn't that exciting? See? But our beer is not fermented properly to be, I'm sorry, naturally. It's not quite the same. Okay, so we'll talk a little bit about fermented foods. Maybe if that's where you are, like if you've made a lot of progress, that's a great goal for this time through the TLT. If some of this other stuff is like, maybe I need to work on that first, don't worry about fermented foods. That's another day, right? So then this last one, I think is probably one of the hardest parts for culturally for Americans. And when an animal was killed, it was consumed from tip to tail. And that's really interesting and important to understand because every part of the animal, perfect design, right? Where everything's perfect design. So each of those parts of the animal contributed to the welfare of the human in some way. Okay, so the liver, the heart, the organ meats, even down to the intestines were all utilized to, now I'm not telling you to go kill something and eat the intestines, but I'm just saying it's important to understand how this role played. We're magnesium deficient as a culture. Well, that's because the Indians would kill a buffalo that had been eating a lot of grass and they would eat the intestines as like a special treat. Like you can't even touch that magnesium consumption. We're like, no thank you. Like we'll pass on that. But it's important to understand that relationship. The bones were boiled down, the marrow was taken out. It was like a special food. Pregnant women, there were certain foods that were reserved just during pregnancy. They were given to pregnant and nursing women for the furtherment of that. And we've lost all of that in our culture. Okay, so now we all eat the fillet. So what happens to the rest of the cow? And I'll tell you a real quick story on this. Linda and I actually purchased a pig together and had it slaughtered from a farmer that has free-range pigs. I don't even know if we've talked about this before, but so we got the pig and like I'm super excited. Like I'm picturing like smoking the pig roast and like some ribs. Well, let me tell you something. A pig has 2 sets of ribs. Like that's it. Right. That's it. That's all you get out of your pig. And then there's like 1 shoulder roast to each, and then there's a lot of other stuff you get. And so like you start to realize like, wow, I mean, for me it was just so eye-opening to realize like when I walk in Publix and I pick out this specific piece of meat, there's a whole animal that came with that meat, and what happens to it? You know, and then what does this meat, you know, just started to get me thinking like, what does that piece of meat serve in my body? But then what does all the rest of it that I didn't? You know, and so, and I was really trying. I even made him give me the bones of the pig. I said, I'm going to use them. I'm going to figure it out. And I mean, I just felt like the amount of sausage from just like the random meat was, I mean, it was really amazing to me. Because you just don't think about that when you just go buy a pack of pork chops or a slab of ribs.
That was where I tweaked it.
I did not get the tail. I'll give you my next big tail. Still probably not going to try the tail. That's really filthy. As much as I'm talking about all the other stuff, that's still filthy. Baby steps. That's not the step for me this TLT. I'll work on something else.
We didn't get the organ meats either.
We didn't get the organ meats.
We probably should have, but
I should have. I can't get past a pig liver though. I can eat a cow liver. But how is that any different?
How does it taste though when I don't have a clue?
I don't know either. But I mean, it's
mix
something.
it like 1/4 liver.
You know what we should have done is maybe had them grind up some of the liver in the sausage.
Yeah.
That's what we should have done. We'll do that this next time. So, but anyways, we're getting a little off topic, but it's interesting that you bring that up, how much culturally we're affected, because maybe somebody else saw this video. It was on Facebook this week. It was super funny, and it was a lady in New York, and she was sampling a new kind of milk, and it was called Barker's Dairy. So it was, did you see it, Dave?
Yeah.
Did you post it?
No.
Oh, it's dog milk. And she had it out in little samples, but she didn't tell people. And she would have them drink it, and they would be like, it's a little sweeter, it's a little different. She's like, well, that's from a dog. And they would be like spitting, cuss her. She's like, wait, so you'll drink milk from a cow, but not from a dog? Like, you know, and you start to think about that, and you're like, oh, yeah, that is pretty weird, isn't it? How culturally affected we are about the things that we eat. So, okay, so let's get down to some nitty gritty. Okay, first of all, let's talk about the first thing. Actually, I'm so glad you brought this plate because I forgot to bring something. So this is perfect. Okay, so a couple of, we live in modern society, right? So we're gonna have things that come in packages. My house has things that come in packages. You know, we just talked about how we wanna live, right? We don't wanna be, if you guys wanted to be like farmers living off the land, you wouldn't be here in Lakeland, Florida. You'd be doing something different. Okay, so we have to say, how can we kind of take this information and do the best that we can to move the dial back towards a more natural approach to how we eat? How can we get closer to the earth? Okay, so one of the things that I always encourage people, and if you already do this maybe isn't your goal for this week, I find that I get really lazy in this, and then when we start a new TLT, I go back and I find things in my cabinet that I'm like, oh, that was in my food. So, so it's good for me too. So anyway, so we all are familiar with the nutrition facts label. Okay, all of this is crap. Okay, don't even look at it. Because then you like look and you're like, oh, a serving size and then calories and fat and all that stuff like that. But we just talked about that we don't actually care about any of that stuff. There are situations where that stuff matters. Let me be clear that it can be important information, but it's not important until the other thing is important. And what that is this really boring part down here that just says ingredients. So when you're starting to think about the foods that you're eating, the very, very first step is to go past all of this to ingredients and read those ingredients, okay? And the reason for that is that we want to know what's actually in there. It doesn't matter, right? Because we want to get closer to the earth. Can you pronounce it? Could you recreate it in your kitchen? Is it doable? Like, I mean, do you know what all those words are and everything like that? Because oftentimes what we find is that there's a lot of hidden ingredients in the foods when we start to read the ingredient labels, and that's more important than the calories and the fat and all those things like that. So I would challenge you, as we focus on nutrition this week, maybe that's the only step that you take this week, is that everything before you eat it, you read the ingredients and make that your first step. Remember, we're doing just small doable changes. You can still eat it if you want to after you read the ingredients, but you're at least making yourself aware and bringing it to the forefront of what you're doing. So that might be a great challenge as a place to start for this week if you're trying to make a change. Yeah?
One of the things that shocked me when I did this the first time was how many different types of sugar they'll put into things. And they'll
I'm
call it
glad you brought that up.
sugar-free. And they'll call it sugar-free or something like that, but then when you read these big words for sugar, and like you said, no matter what it is, sugar is sugar is sugar.
Yep, sugar is sugar is sugar. And so that can be hidden in, and I wish I had totally forgot to bring more examples, but I'll do an example. I'll do a little Facebook video and post it for you guys, where we'll go through and look at something like, that seems healthy. Let's take like a Cliff Bar. You think of like a Cliff Bar as being pretty darn healthy, or a granola bar, something like that. And so, okay, let's back up. Ingredients. They have to be listed in the order that they, like, in the quantity. Does that make sense? Did I say that in a way that made sense? So whatever's in there most, so in this case, shelled pumpkin seeds. Well, clearly shelled pumpkin seeds is the main ingredient in these pumpkin seeds, right? And then it lists everything else in order. Okay, so what they do what food companies do is they use multiple types of sugar, because otherwise sugar would have to be listed as like the first ingredient, and then everything else would come after, because, so it's a little trick. So once you start to learn to recognize the sugars in there, you can start to see. So take like a kid's cereal, not sure, maybe corn or wheat would be the first ingredient, but it'll be that, and then it'll be like malt barley, or malt barley, and then it'll list like something else,
Brown
like
rice
baking
syrup.
soda, and then brown
Brown
rice
rice
syrup,
syrup,
and
yeah.
then, because that sounds a lot healthier,
Mhm.
and then
Yeah.
like maybe the 7th ingredients will be like pure cane sugar, and then, you know, down like that. So it'll list like 6 or 7 different sugars, so that it can spread it out, so it doesn't just have to say wheat and sugar, you know, and then list all these other things. So it really is deceiving to the eye when you read through the ingredients and get the idea of what's in there. And they do the same thing with like hydrogenated oils. So they'll use multiple types of hydrogenated oils so that they don't have to list it. Because then you read through it and you're like, oh, you know, there's a little bit of this, a little bit, that's not so bad. But if you added them all together, you would realize that it's really actually quite a significant amount. Okay, so that's sort of your first step, is to read the ingredients in something. Now, obviously, and this is where maybe we'll step to this other sheet. So let's go ahead and step to this one. So I'll give you, I'm gonna have you guys share on this one, because I'm gonna have,
You know, I don't know.
you already
If we
done
don't
it?
have enough home.
Well, we can share, I can make copies for people at the end too. So I'll let you guys share there, you guys can share there, hang on, maybe we can get somebody else to share. Okay, will you share it with Art? I'll take that one. Good, you guys are sharing, and then Tammy right there. Okay, so this will test my memory and see how good I am. I have a copy machine right here, so I'll give it to you. You guys might have to cue me just a little bit. Okay, so before we eat something, the most basic way that we can go about it is to learn these 5 questions and start to ask yourself in terms of these questions. So what's the first question, Carolyn? Will you read it to me?
How many steps did it take to get to its current state?
Okay, so we already talked about that, right? The wheatgrass versus like a piece of bread. Okay, so when we look at a piece of bread and we say, okay, this is wheat bread, but what is wheat? And we picture the wheatgrass and we say, well, that's pretty far removed, right, from its natural state. And we even talked about one of the principles of the health of the ancestral people was that they ate closest to it. So if you want to go around and chew on some wheat, that's awesome. If you want to talk about bread, that's pretty far cry from wheat. Okay, same thing with like corn checks. Pretty far cry from like an ear of corn to Chex cereal. It's a big, big difference there. Okay, so how many steps did it take to get? And that even is true for simple things like, you know, you think to yourself, tomato juice. Okay, well, I'm not telling you that tomato juice is bad. I'm not saying you should never eat it, but I think you should consider the idea that it's pretty far from eating a tomato to drink tomato juice. Same thing with juicing in general. Just to drink kale juice is a pretty far cry from a piece of kale. Now, it's not bad. I'm not saying you shouldn't do it, but I'm saying consider it in terms of which one's going to have the better impact on your body. Eating the kale is going to have the better impact on your body than drinking the kale juice. Okay, again, not telling you that you can't go have some kale juice. By all means, if you're switching out Diet Coke for kale juice, have fun. Drink all the kale juice you want. But it's just to have you thinking in those terms. Okay, second question. Okay, will you read me the second one?
Would your great-great-grandmother recognize the food and know what it was?
Okay, so this is a great way to start to think about food in terms of, so like, picture your great-grandmother, okay? Maybe you met her, hopefully, maybe I met mine. Okay, her mother, okay? What was her life like? Okay, so the food that you're about to consume, would she recognize that? Would she even know what that was? So like G2, Gatorade, she's like neon yellow beverage, she's gonna be like, no, I don't think so. You know, Mountain Dew, Coke, all of those things, she would predate all of those kinds of things. Even things like a protein bar. She would look at a protein bar and be like, oh, no, why would I eat that? Okay? So it's important to think in terms of that because we know that people are living shorter and shorter lives. So our lifespan is actually shorter than the generation prior to us, and that's been a little trend for a while. It's getting shorter, so our kids have a shorter lifespan than us based on predictions if things don't change, you know. And a lot of that has to do with our diet, but also their access to food. Even my grandfather, not even great-great, I mean, when he went to the hardware store, he bought nails, not a Snickers bar, right? You know, now you literally cannot walk in anywhere that there's not food being pushed at you. Even my son just got a thing of Legos, and there's like Legos that have ice cream cones on them, and I'm like, you can't even play blocks without thinking about ice cream? Like, really? You know, so there is food just everywhere, and there's nowhere you can go. So even if it's something that your great-great-grandmother might have eaten, I am sure she enjoyed a chocolate cake sometimes when there was flour and there was sugar and there was an occasion for a chocolate cake. And all those things, the stars aligned that you had all the things you needed at the time that there was an occasion. Because she sure wouldn't have wasted her flour and sugar if there wasn't an occasion. You know what I mean? So starting to think in terms of that. All right, third question. Brian, right?
Yes.
Brian.
Does that color occur in nature?
So that's a really important one, right? So it can be really tricky. I like yogurt as my best example on this one. Watermelon yogurt or something like that, and you like pop it open, or like green apple, and it's like neon. And kids yogurt is the absolute worst at this. They make them these crazy colors, and you say to yourself, I've never seen a watermelon that color before, right? So does that color occur in nature? That can be true of, you know, a lot of your like goldfish crackers, Cheez-Its, yogurts, cereals. Chocolate milk. I guess you could say I've never seen chocolate milk come out of a cow. You could relate it that way. That works. But when you compare the colors, they're much more vibrant, the fake colors, than the colors in nature would be. Okay? Read me the next one, Art.
How many health claims are written on the package?
Okay, so that's really, really important, and that's a real tricky one. So as you go down, for example, the cereal aisle, there's boxes that are proclaiming like heart healthy or whole grains or all these different things. So I want you to understand that every label, every health claim that's on a label like that is paid for by someone. That is in advertising and marketing. So they make money. Kellogg's makes money by making a deal with the Heart Association that they can pay money and Kellogg's will put the heart thing on there. And now you think it's heart healthy, when in reality it's not. You know, so it's all marketing. It's all paid advertisement. So what I encourage you to do is walk through the produce section and see how many health claims are on there. Yet we all know that a sweet potato is a far cry more healthier than a box of Cheerios, right? I mean, we don't have to have that conversation, do we? Really? So, we all know like some beets are gonna beat Fruit Loops. The banana's gonna beat Fruit Loops. But yet there's no claim on the banana that proclaims, you know, maybe the box that it comes in has a claim on it or something like that. Or that little tiny sticker, if you like get a magnifying glass, sometimes they'll be like lycopene leader, it'll say on there or something like that. All right, and the last question, Heather, you want to read that one for me?
How many ingredients are on the list?
Okay, yeah, so that's a pretty basic one. We kind of already talked about that. We read the ingredient list, and you want to aim for, I say 5 or fewer ingredients in that. Let's be clear, like this has probably like 9, but it's ingredients like granulated garlic, crushed tomato, dried basil. So 5 is just to give you the idea that if there's a really long ingredient list, you probably want to think twice about it, because probably half of those are some type of sugar, and the other half are some type of hydrogenated oil. Read the ingredient list. It's really more just to get you back to reading the ingredient list. Okay, so we're going to try and wrap it up in just a couple of seconds here. I wanted to give you those 5 questions. What I want you to do is think this week. If you flip your thing over, I've given you some various different things. I've given you some sweeteners. Those are different types of sweeteners. What are they? Are they better? Are they worse? I've given you some meal ideas in there. And then I've also given you like a level 1, level 2, level 3 in your packet. Okay, I'll post those also on Facebook. Listen, you don't have to follow any of those levels. some people really, really need, like, we've tried to do these kinds of things and just give people the questions and they're just lost, you know, like, what do I eat though? You know, so I get that. So we created some different levels there, and it kind of gives you a guide to say, like, okay, what level am I? So right now, if you're eating, you know, McDonald's and cereal and Pop-Tarts and stuff like that, you want to start at the easiest one, and you want to try and make the majority of your diet, so it's listed there, like, what should you eat in abundance, what should you eat in moderation, what should you limit severely, okay? Please, please, please don't feel like you have to use one of those lists. That might be even still a very far cry from where you are. Maybe for week 1, the only thing you do is just every single thing you eat, you pick up the package and you read the back of it. And if you just did that, that would be a tremendous step in the right direction, because you would start to be aware that you don't know what you're putting in your body. Okay? So this week you're going to be asked, and that'll come out, you're going to be asked each week of the Tribal Life Transformation to make 2 goals for the week. Okay? Remember that these are just small goals. They can build on each other. What I would like you to do is make 2 goals. This week is nutrition, 2 goals in nutrition. And then next week, we're going to layer on top of that. So you're not going to be like, all right, week's over, whew, you know, and go to the next, you know. But you'd like to maintain, if you did a great job, then make those 2 goals a little bit harder. And we're going to add 2 more goals on the topic of, second week is stress. I think it's stress. I can't remember if it's stress or sleep. We'll find out in week 2. I have it written down. Listen, I don't have any brain cells left. They're being sucked away from me. It's either stress or sleep, I promise. I think it's stress because you have to get the stress under control to sleep. So I think it's stress. So we'll layer on top each week and try to expand on those nutrition goals. So we do week 1 as nutrition because nutrition is the foundation of crafting your healthier life. Okay? You've got to have that in place first. So you'll have 6 weeks to build on these goals and make them a little bit more challenging, dig a little bit deeper. And your goal may be to try an avocado this week. I mean, really, it's not, we're not talking about giant goals. It may be to pick out one piece of produce that you've never had before.
Can you cook it?
Figure out how to cook it. Yeah. Figure out.
And then put pictures of it so everybody can.
Oh, an avocado? Can you cook it?
Yes.
Really?
Yes.
Dave?
I have seen it fried,
Right.
battered and fried.
Actually, like
You can actually
throw
put
a
it
couple
in with
eggs
a
on
burger,
the avocado right there.
burger, make a,
I bet it
Yeah.
would be nice and creamy.
Yeah. So you know, it may be you're.
Put it with the.
But I just want you to think realistically, right? So people try to come back, and me and Mark will try to help you as you're doing this as team leaders. Often, you know, we'll be like, okay, what are your goals for the week? No sugar. Okay, well, you just failed before you even
Yeah.
started. So, like, you know what I mean? Like that's not going to happen. Yeah, right. It sounds like a good goal. So I want you to really think in doable, actionable steps. Okay? So let's say in your family, you eat out 5 nights a week, you know, okay, so maybe this week I'm going to try to prepare a meal at home that I can use for dinner and maybe lunch the next day. If that's far-fetched for you, you know, that's not far-fetched, but if that's a challenge for you. I know, Michelle, you've shared with me that you live alone, so it can be very challenging for you to be inspired to produce anything, you know, like to create. So for you, maybe a great goal this week is, it could be as simple, you know, they make cookbooks that's just cooking for 2, and then that's literally, you know, dinner one day and lunch the next day type thing. Or maybe a great goal for you is to just pick out 2 new recipes and try to change them. Or a piece of produce that you've never had before. Maybe if you're not a breakfast eater this week, a great goal for you is to try to have breakfast 4 days out of the week. Don't make it 5. You got to have a mulligan in there. You got to have something where you can mess up. Maybe if alcohol is an issue for you, you set a drink limit for the week. That's usually mine when I'm not pregnant. That's always my first week. I will only have 8 drinks this week, or whatever it is, like depending on how bad, depending on where I'm starting from. Depends on where I'm starting from. Sometimes I'm starting a little deeper in the hole. at other times.
Only
But-
drink half the bottle today.
But if alcohol is an issue for you, a week drink count is a lot more practical than saying, you know, I won't drink any alcohol, or I'll only have one glass of wine a day. Well, that's bull crap, because Friday's gonna come around, you're gonna have one glass of wine, and then you're gonna really want another one. So if you have a total for the week, then you can be like, all right, Monday, I'm gung-ho, I'm not having any, I can make it through Monday, you know, Tuesday, I'm probably gonna make it. Now, I've got 2 that I can have on Friday and Saturday, because that's realistic for my life. But really, I don't need to have a glass of wine on Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday, because then Thursday becomes 2 and Friday becomes 2 and Saturday becomes 3. And then Sunday, it's like, screw it, might as well have one. So, you know, like, these are small goals. So that's when I'm in the hole. That's usually my first week.
Dreaming of labor, aren't you?
No, actually, it's
Oh,
pretty
yeah.
repulsive to me now, like right now. It has been, so,
The drinking peak.
yeah.
Mhm.
I don't really miss it, so, so that's good, so, when I come out of pregnancy, I'll be in a good place, that doesn't have to be my first week, I can focus on something else. It'll be the first time ever. Okay, good, do we have any questions? All right, I like it, the lawyer's coming at me, fight with me.
So the eat sparingly or avoid completely suggestions here,
Okay, which level are you at?
1.
Okay, is that the easiest one? I think
That's my question, is that the easiest one?
Well, there's a thing where that it
That's what I
asks
said.
you,
That's what I said.
Professor, yeah.
yeah,
Oh, yeah.
okay, so level 1, yes.
So it says avoid peas and beans. Why-
Okay, so it doesn't say necessarily avoid them, but eat sparingly.
Why is that?
The reason for that, and we can talk more in detail about this. Number 1, the beans that you're eating here are probably coming out of a can, they're not properly
They are,
prepared. Yeah, so properly prepared beans should actually be fermented and soaked and then cooked over a long period of time, okay? When that's not done properly, they can be very disruptive to the digestive system, which is why we have the cool little thing, beans, the good for your heart, the more you eat, the more you bark. Properly prepared beans don't do that to you, okay? So that's why, is because they're not actually in their closest to natural state when you have them. They've been quickly like boiled just to get them soft enough to put into a can type thing. With that said, if that's the biggest concern for you, you're doing pretty good. Pick something else. You know, like we can talk more about how to properly prepare beans if that's a goal for you this week. But you know, I mean, really, how much beans do you really eat? I don't know very many people that eat.
It's still a good question. One time I bought a bag of beans,
We sucked it.
and I filled up a pot of water,
Fermenting our own beans.
put my beans in it, and I put it on a low boil and went to sleep. Woke up at 3 o'clock in the morning with a lot of smoke in the house.
Yeah.
Well,
So-
I abandoned that project.
We've been getting like fresh green beans, so
Oh,
that
green
would be.
beans is totally different.
Okay.
Yeah, we're talking about like black beans,
Yeah, but we do
beans.
that with like, you know, we do that too, but yeah, they're in the cans, but so like fresh green beans would be fine, right?
Oh, yeah,
Or fresh-
that's a vegetable, not
Fresh
a.
any beans.
Yeah.
So then also the last thing is obviously avoiding, if we can as much as possible, bread and pasta. And then it just turns into sugar. is that
Yeah,
right?
it's essentially just sugar in your body, but if we go back to our questions, how far removed is it from its natural state?
Bread is it very far, well, it is, I guess, because it goes through a lot from the wheat field.
Yeah, so you're thinking
I
about.
always
a piece
thought it
of
was just
bread.
bread, isn't it, but I guess not.
Now listen, again, with all of this, there's nuances, okay? So, bread, traditional bread, your great-great-grandmother would have eaten traditional bread, and you can make that argument to me. Traditional bread takes a week to make. Right, so it doesn't have all the chemicals added to it to make it quickly leaven and, you know, like rise and all these different things. It would have been a natural yeast, it would have been a sourdough bread that had soured over time, created a culture. That culture would naturally have yeast in it. And if that's your goal this week, I can help you with that. That's how I make bread in my house. We don't have bread very often, especially since I've had a baby. It's like, sorry, sucker, no bread this week. You're lucky we got food. But
Maybe eat bread, any other bread, but, you know.
listen, and again, we gotta live, right? If that's not within the realm of what you can live with, don't focus on that. There's plenty of other things you can think about. There is some great, I'm completely gluten-free just because I have found through challenges that it doesn't work for me to eat gluten. There is some great gluten-free breads. You know, you can look for some breads that read the ingredients, what has the more natural ingredients, less of the, is it bromine? Is that what's in there? Bromine or bromate? It's been so long since I bought a loaf of bread.
It's like a list of things you can't read. So look for
Right,
those
so look for one, or, you
Yeah,
know,
Old Northern
go
Bakehouse
to
is
the,
open.
I think, I don't know how often that Born and Bread place is open,
Tomorrow.
but she
Tomorrow.
makes her own bread.
Mhm.
So that would be a step in the right direction, because then you'll realize that bread only lasts a day or two.
And
And-
there's other bread people that do come down to
Yeah.
the farmer's
Farmer's
market
market
that have,
on
and
Saturday.
she does her own.
Okay, so
yeah.
maybe that's the step
Yeah,
in the
I-
right direction that's appropriate for you this week, you know? Listen, I'm not, again, let's think in terms of what's an appropriate step in the right direction rather than making your life miserable, because you're not gonna stick with it if it's making your life miserable. So, a handmade bread that doesn't have all that, like, it's not Wonder Bread with a bunch of crap in it, that's a great step in the right direction. Making your own loaf of bread is a great step in the right direction. Yes?
What are some things you can buy that are fermented, like I can go to the store? and-
Sure.
I'm just not very familiar with.
Fermented foods?
Yeah.
Okay, so again, we're gonna talk in shades here. Buying it at the store is a great step in the right direction. Many of your fermented foods at the store are pasteurized though. So in pasteurization, they kill the probiotic value of the fermented. So like sauerkraut you buy at the store is pasteurized. You can get some like at Whole Foods and things like that that are not pasteurized, but pasteurization, it's the same with your dairy. So like the dairy that you buy at the store has completely no value for you. It's completely ruined. It's not even dairy. It's so